1871. Members of a Mississippi Ku Klux Klan cell dragged a black railroad porter off a night route, chained him to a table in an abandoned sawmill, and began breaking him piece by piece, measuring how much pain he could take before he stopped being useful. They mocked his silence, catalogued his scars, and argued over how long to keep him alive as a warning to others. By dawn, he was gone. By sunset, 3 Klansmen were missing. Within days, a church lay burned. A federal marshal was asking questions no one wanted answered, and men who had worn hoods for years started turning on each other. What the Klan never questioned, until it was far too late, was why a man they thought powerless survived their table at all. They had no idea who they had chained down, or what they had just reactivated. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The sun melted into the horizon, painting the Mississippi sky in deep purples and reds. Elijah Booker stood at the rail depot's loading dock, his broad shoulders hunched as he methodically arranged cargo manifests. The evening air hung thick with late summer heat, heavy enough to make even breathing feel like work. His weathered hands moved with purpose across the papers, each motion careful and measured. A slight tremor ran through his left leg, an old injury that worsened in the damp. But he kept his weight balanced, never letting the limp show too much. 20 years of porter work had taught him that showing weakness invited trouble. The depot sat lonely at the end of a rail spur, surrounded by tall pines that whispered in the dying light. Elijah's eyes tracked every movement. The station master locking up the office, workers heading home along the dirt road, shadows lengthening between the cargo crates. He noted the location of every door, every window, every possible exit, an old habit he couldn't shake. When footsteps approached from behind, Elijah's shoulders tensed slightly, but he didn't turn. Just the night watchman making his rounds. The man's boots scraped against wooden planks in a familiar pattern. "Almost done here, Mr. Booker?" the watchman asked. "Yes, sir," Elijah replied softly, his voice barely carrying. "Just need to finish these last forms." His fingers traced the edge of the manifest, counting pages. He always kept his movements slow, deliberate. No sudden gestures that might startle people. No quick reaches that might be misinterpreted. Even after all these years, survival meant being careful. The light faded quickly now, darkness pooling beneath the trees. Elijah lit the small lantern at his workstation, its yellow glow casting long shadows across the loading dock. In the distance, he heard the soft thunder of hooves approaching along the packed earth road. His hands stilled on the papers. Those weren't the usual evening riders. Too many horses moving too quietly, trying not to be noticed. Elijah's muscles coiled with tension, but he forced himself to keep working, to appear unaware. They came fast once they broke cover. 6 riders in white hoods, moving with practiced coordination. Before Elijah could react, rough hands seized him from behind. A bag went over his head, plunging him into darkness. He didn't waste energy fighting as they bound his hands. Instead, he focused on gathering information. The rope was hemp, hastily tied. 4 sets of hands held him. 2 more guided the horses. The air grew cooler as they moved him, suggesting they were heading north into the pine forest. They rode for what felt like an hour, though Elijah knew better than to trust time in darkness. He tracked their path by the slope of the ground and the sounds around them. Water to the east, probably the creek that fed the old sawmill. The hoofbeats changed from packed earth to wooden planks. The smell of old sawdust and creosote confirmed his suspicions. When they finally stopped, the riders dragged him roughly from the horse. His bad leg buckled, but he caught himself before they could use the weakness against him. The bag came off his head, leaving him blinking in sudden lamplight. The sawmill's interior loomed vast and dark above them, its machinery silent ghosts in the shadows. Dust motes danced in the lantern's glow. The air felt thick with old wood and newer rot. Two men in white hoods forced him toward a heavy wooden table that sat at an angle, its surface scarred and stained. They pushed him down onto it, stretching his arms and legs wide before securing them with leather straps. The position left him exposed, vulnerable. Every instinct screamed at him to fight. Instead, Elijah remained still, controlling his breathing. He studied what he could see of the men's hands as they worked. One set calloused and efficient, the other soft with manicured nails. He memorized their heights, their builds, the way they moved. The two men took positions on either side of him. The one with soft hands shifted impatiently, fingers drumming against leather. The other stood perfectly still, watching, waiting. "Let's see how tough you really are," the impatient one said, voice muffled by his hood. The first blow caught Elijah across the jaw, snapping his head sideways. Pain bloomed bright and sharp. He could have shouted, could have begged, could have given them what they wanted. Instead, he chose silence, let his mind drift to a place beyond pain, beyond fear. Let his face go slack and empty as another blow landed, and another. He had survived worse than this. He would survive this, too. But for now, he would give them nothing. Not his voice, not his fear, not even his hate. Just silence and the growing certainty that they had made a terrible mistake. The lantern light swung in lazy arcs, casting moving shadows across the sawmill's high beams. Hours had passed since the first blow. Elijah's captors worked in shifts now, trading places to rest their knuckles. They were learning that breaking a man took more effort than they'd expected. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," said the one with soft hands, flexing his fingers. "Just give us what we want." Elijah kept his eyes fixed on a point in the darkness above. His jaw ached, but he focused on gathering details instead of pain. The table beneath him sat at a 40-degree angle, bolted to the floor with rusted brackets. The leather straps binding his wrists showed wear, old tack repurposed from riding gear. Each piece of information might matter later. A new voice cut through the darkness, sharp with authority. "Any progress?" "No, sir," Soft Hands answered. "Haven't gotten a sound out of him." "Then you're not trying hard enough." The voice drew closer, cultured accent betraying old money. "These people only understand one language." Footsteps approached the table. A figure in a more elaborate hood leaned over Elijah, studying him like a curious specimen. This one moved differently, military-bearing, poorly hidden beneath affected casualness. A leader, then? Someone used to being obeyed. "I know you can speak," the man said. "I heard you at the depot. All yes, sir, and no, sir. Very proper. Very careful." He produced a knife, letting lantern light play along its edge. "Let's see how careful you can stay." The blade traced shallow lines across Elijah's forearms, not cutting yet, just promising pain. Elijah used the moment to count bodies in the room. 4 by the door, 2 flanking the table. The leader made 7. Heavy breathing from the loft suggested at least 2 more watching from above. "You know what your kind's problem is?" the leader continued, voice silky with contempt. "You think you're people now. Think you deserve respect just for existing." The knife pressed harder, drawing a thin line of blood. The war might have changed the law, but it didn't change nature. And nature has a proper order. Elijah kept his face blank, but his mind recorded every word, every inflection. The leader's voice triggered something in his memory, not from the depot, but from somewhere darker, somewhere that smelled of gunpowder and burning homes. Hours blurred together in a haze of calculated torment. They avoided permanent damage, wanting him whole enough to serve as an example. Instead, they focused on humiliation, forced kneeling, mock prayers, endless questions designed to strip dignity rather than gather information. Through it all, Elijah watched and waited. He noted how the guard shifts changed every 2 hours, how the lantern needed refilling around midnight, how the leader, Crowder, he'd heard someone call him, grew increasingly frustrated by his silence. His left thumb had gone numb from testing the strap's give. The right ankle binding had a weak spot, where leather met buckle. Most importantly, he'd identified the load-bearing beams, the exit routes, the places where shadow gathered deepest. Well past midnight, Elijah began his performance. He let his breathing grow ragged, irregular. His body trembled, not the sharp shaking of fear, but the subtle quiver of a system shutting down. When he rolled his eyes back, showing whites, the reaction was immediate. "Something's wrong," Soft Hands said, panic edging his voice. "He's having some kind of fit." "Don't be fooled," Crowder snapped. "He's faking." But uncertainty had entered the room. These men were used to quick violence, not slow death. They didn't want a corpse that would raise questions. "Sir, if he dies—" "Check him then, if you're so concerned." Boots approached, fingers pressed against Elijah's throat, seeking a pulse. He gave them what they wanted, a heartbeat fast and thready, the rhythm of a body in crisis. His skin had grown cold and clammy from the night air, adding authenticity to the act. "Pulse is all wrong," Soft Hands reported. "And he's cold. This isn't right." Crowder cursed. "Loosen the straps. Let him breathe, but watch him carefully." That was all Elijah needed, a single mistake born of fear. He kept his body limp as they adjusted the restraints, every muscle ready. Soon they would realize their error, but by then it would be too late. The weapon they thought was broken would show its true edge. For now, though, he continued his performance. Shallow breathing, occasional tremors, the perfect picture of a man at death's door. Above, the lantern swung in its lonely arc, counting down the moments until everything changed. The moments stretched like molasses as Elijah waited, his performance of near death drawing his captors closer. When Soft Hands leaned in to check his breathing again, Elijah knew his window had arrived. With practiced control, he pressed his thumb against the loosened strap and pushed, feeling the familiar pop of dislocation. Pain flared, sharp and clean, but he kept his face slack. The freed hand remained limp beside him, fingers curled naturally. Timing mattered more than speed now. He counted breaths, tracking movements around him through sound and air pressure. Crowder paced near the door, boots striking wooden planks in an impatient rhythm. Two men whispered by the workbench, their attention wavering. The lantern sputtered, running low on oil. "Perfect. Check that light," Crowder ordered. "I don't want him dying in the dark where he can try something." Footsteps approached the lantern. Metal clinked against metal as someone adjusted the wick. The flame flickered, casting wild shadows. In that moment of distributed attention, Elijah struck. His head snapped forward, connecting with Soft Hands' nose. Cartilage crunched. Before the man could cry out, Elijah's freed hand grabbed a fistful of hood and slammed the head down against the table edge. The body crumpled. Shouts erupted. Elijah was already moving, yanking his other hand free of the loosened restraints. Someone lunged for him. He caught the man's vest and used the momentum to drive him into the wall. Wood splintered from the impact. "Stop him!" Elijah rolled off the table as boots thundered across the floor. His ankles were still bound, but the restraints had enough give to work with. He gripped the table's edge and heaved. Years of loading cargo had built strength that surprised them. The heavy wooden surface toppled with a crash, pinning one man beneath it. Chaos erupted in the confined space. Men collided in their rush to grab him. The lantern fell, oil spreading across the floor. Elijah twisted free of grasping hands, using the darkness to his advantage. His fingers found the ankle restraints and yanked them loose. A shot cracked through the air. Splinters exploded from a beam near his head. Elijah kept low, moving by memory toward the door he'd marked hours ago. More shots followed, but panic made them wild. Their own fear of hitting each other worked in his favor. He shouldered through the door into cool night air. Pine needles bit into his bare feet as he ran, but the pain was distant, catalogued and set aside. Behind him, voices shouted orders and direction. Horses whinnied, startled by the commotion. Elijah angled away from the obvious paths, letting his training guide him. Water sounds drew him toward swampland. The ground grew softer, then wet, perfect for losing tracks. The darkness between trees swallowed him as naturally as it had during the war. He pushed through reed thickets, ignoring scratches and cuts. Distance mattered more than comfort. When horses thundered past some 100 yards to his right, he allowed himself a slow breath. They were following obvious trails while he chose harder paths. The moon set. False dawn began painting the sky in grays and purples. Elijah's legs finally began to shake, adrenaline fading into bone-deep exhaustion. He had put miles between himself and the sawmill, moving in curves and doubles to confuse pursuit. Among a stand of cypress trees, he found a hollow screened by hanging moss. His body wanted to collapse, but he took time to check sight lines and exit routes first. Only then did he allow himself to sink down, back pressed against rough bark. The tremors started as the sky lightened, not from fear or cold, but from the effort of holding back. He had wanted to do more than escape. The weapon inside him had screamed for blood, for broken bodies and final solutions. The skills that had made him deadly during the war had hummed beneath his skin, begging to be unleashed. But he had chosen differently, had used just enough force to escape, no more. The men he'd struck would wake with pain but no permanent damage. Even now, he could return and end them efficiently, permanently. He knew their routines, their weaknesses. It would be easy. Dawn painted the cypress trees gold. A bird called somewhere nearby, starting its day with simple purpose. Elijah watched light spread across the swamp and made his choice again. He would disappear, find another rail line, another quiet job. Let the weapon sleep a while longer. He touched his dislocated thumb, considering the joint's swelling. It would need setting soon. For now, though, he simply breathed, letting the peace of morning wash over him. He had escaped without killing, had chosen a harder path than violence. That would have to be enough. By mid-morning, the swamp's humidity pressed down like a wet blanket. Elijah's limp had worsened, each step sending sharp pains up his leg. The thumb he'd dislocated during escape throbbed steadily. He'd reset it against a tree trunk, but the joint remained swollen and stiff. He recognized these woods from his Porter route. A small settlement of freed families lay less than a mile ahead, hidden from the main roads. They deserved warning. His survival would have consequences for others. It always did. Elijah kept to the tree line, watching for riders. His bare feet found softer ground where possible, though hours of walking had left them cut and bruised. The borrowed clothes he wore, taken from a clothesline near dawn, stuck to his skin with sweat. The first sign of trouble came as smoke on the wind. Not cooking fires or brush clearing, but the thick black smoke of buildings burning. Elijah quickened his pace despite the pain, staying low as he approached. Shouts carried through the trees, the crack of a whip. A woman's scream cut short. He reached the settlement's edge in time to see 3 homes already burning. Clansmen moved between buildings with torches, their white hoods stark against the morning sky. They worked with practiced efficiency, some holding families at gunpoint, while others destroyed possessions and searched for hidden valuables. A young boy tried to run. A rider caught him with a rope, dragging him back as the child's mother wailed. Elijah's hands clenched into fists, the weapon inside him rising, but he forced himself to wait, to observe, count the men, note weapons. Mark leaders. "Where is he?" one rider demanded, grabbing an elderly man by his shirt front. "The porter. The one who ran last night. You people helped him." "We don't know any porter," the old man wheezed. "Please, we're just trying to live." The answer earned him a backhanded blow that sent him sprawling. From behind a storage shed, Elijah watched a woman being hauled from her home. Sarah Whitlow. He recognized her from the rail stop where she sold baked goods. They pushed her toward the center of the settlement where other families knelt in the dirt. "Your boy makes deliveries to the rail station," a Clansman said, pointing his pistol at her head. "Did he help the porter escape? Tell me true, now." Sarah stood straight-backed, despite her fear. "My son's been sick 3 days. Ask anyone here. We don't know your porter." The man struck her with his pistol grip. She stumbled, but didn't fall. "Burn it all," someone ordered. Not Crowder's voice, but similar in authority. "Let them remember what helping runners costs." Elijah's muscles coiled with readiness. He could take 3, maybe 4 before they realized what was happening. But there were 15 men at least, all armed. Acting now would only add bodies to the burning. He watched Sarah help the elderly man to his feet as flames consumed her home. Her face showed grief, but not surprise. This violence was familiar, expected. That understanding hit Elijah harder than any blow from the night before. The raiders took their time, ensuring nothing salvageable remained. They wanted witnesses to carry the message. Resistance brought destruction. When they finally rode away, the sun had climbed past noon. Elijah emerged from hiding once the dust settled. The families had already begun salvaging what they could, working together with the efficiency of practice. Several children carried water from the well to douse lingering flames. Sarah saw him first. She passed her bucket to another woman and approached, her split lip dark with dried blood. "You're him," she said. Not a question. "The one they're hunting?" Elijah nodded. "I came to warn you." "I was too late." "You thought running would save us?" Her tone held no accusation, only tired knowledge. "They don't need reasons, just excuses. I know that now." Elijah looked at the smoking ruins, the dazed families. "I thought avoiding bloodshed was mercy. I was wrong." Sarah studied him, noting his stance, his controlled movements. "You're not just a porter." "No." "Good." She turned back toward the destruction. "Because we don't need more runners. We need someone who'll make them think twice about coming back." The weapon stirred inside him, recognized and welcomed rather than feared. Elijah watched the sun begin its westward slide. By nightfall, he could be miles away, anonymous again on another rail line. Safe. Instead, he began counting his remaining ammunition, checking the knife he'd taken along with the clothes. The skills he'd tried to bury were rising like floodwater. This time, he wouldn't fight them back down. "They'll return at dark," Sarah said, "to see if anyone tries leaving." Elijah nodded. "I know." He looked toward the road the raiders had taken. "I'll be here." Moonlight painted the rail lines silver. Elijah moved between shadows, following the tracks back toward the sawmill. His borrowed clothes had dried stiff with sweat, and his feet left small bloodstains on the wooden ties. The night air carried sounds clearly: crickets, distant owls, and the soft crunch of boots trying to be quiet. They were waiting for him. At least 6 men spread in a loose circle near the water tower, where porters often rested between runs. Their positions showed military training: overlapping fields of fire, clear escape routes covered. Not common night riders, then. These were Crowder's chosen men. Elijah could have slipped past them. Even injured, he knew a dozen ways to become invisible in darkness. Instead, he limped directly toward the water tower, making no effort to hide his approach. A rifle clicked behind him. "That's far enough." Elijah stopped, hands loose at his sides. More figures emerged from shadow, moving with the confidence of those who knew their prey was surrounded. The circle tightened. "Thought you'd try running again," one man said, jabbing Elijah's ribs with a pistol barrel. "Ain't so quick now, are you?" Elijah remained silent, noting weapons, positions, weaknesses. A man with a slight drag to his left leg. Another whose breathing suggested broken ribs, poorly healed. Information filed away. Not yet needed. Boots crunched on gravel. The circle parted as Silas Crowder approached, his hood pushed back to reveal a face lined with old scars. He studied Elijah like a horse at auction. "You caused quite a stir today," Crowder said. "Made us waste valuable time burning out your friends." He circled slowly, noting Elijah's injuries. "But you came back. Why is that?" Elijah said nothing. He tracked Crowder by sound and peripheral vision, counting steps between turns. "Not much of a talker." Crowder stopped in front. "That's fine. You'll find your voice soon enough." He nodded to his men. "Secure him. Carefully, this time." Rough hands grabbed Elijah's arms. He allowed himself to be forced to his knees, then bent forward until his forehead touched cold gravel. Someone bound his wrists with practiced efficiency. Figure 8 pattern, hemp rope, tight but not cutting. They'd done this before. "You know what fascinates me?" Crowder continued conversationally. "A man your age, with your obvious strength, working as a porter, carrying bags, saying, 'Yes, sir,' and 'No, sir.' It doesn't fit." The voice triggered something in Elijah's memory, not from the sawmill, but from years before. A battlefield report, target descriptions memorized by firelight, priority eliminations during the final months of war. Colonel Silas Crowder, known for executing prisoners after surrender, marked for removal but escaped south before Elijah's unit could reach him. The war ended before they could finish the list. "Stand him up," Crowder ordered. "I want to see his eyes." They hauled Elijah upright. He kept his gaze lowered, giving away nothing. The weapon inside him stirred, recognizing prey, but he held it in check. "Not yet." "The war broke men like you," Crowder said softly. "Taught you your place. But sometimes lessons need refreshing." He gripped Elijah's jaw, forcing eye contact. "You're going to help us send a message. One that lasts." Elijah saw the pleasure in Crowder's expression, the satisfaction of power absolute and unchallenged, the certainty that strength belonged to men like him by divine right. "Get him in the wagon," Crowder said. "We're moving somewhere more private this time." They half-dragged, half-carried Elijah to a covered wagon. The interior smelled of hay and old blood. As they secured him to metal rings bolted to the floorboards, he listened to their movements, their breathing patterns, gathered data for later use. The wagon lurched into motion. Through gaps in the canvas, Elijah watched stars wheel overhead. Each bump sent pain through his injuries, but he welcomed it. Pain kept the mind sharp, the senses alert. He would need both. The war had taught him efficiency, how to eliminate enemies faster than they could be named. But that was impersonal, distant. This would be intimate. He would take his time, make sure Crowder understood exactly who he'd captured before the end. They traveled for nearly an hour before stopping. As hands reached in to pull him out, Elijah left mercy behind like a shed skin. The weapon rose inside him, familiar and hungry. This time, he embraced it fully. Dawn light filtered through canvas as the wagon rolled along rutted roads. Elijah tested his bonds methodically, feeling where the ropes had loosened during the night's journey. 2 guards rode in back with him. Young men, tired from watching, growing careless as morning approached. The first guard dozed, chin dropping to chest. The second stared ahead, blinking heavily. Elijah shifted, letting chains rattle just enough to mask his movements. The ropes around his wrists were loose enough now. He'd been working them silently for hours. The wagon hit a deep rut. The dozing guards startled awake, cursing. "How much further?" "Few miles," the other said. New place Crowder found. Old tobacco barn. Elijah waited for the next bump, timing his move. When it came, he surged upward. Before either guard could shout, he drove his shoulder into the first man's chest. They tumbled together. Elijah's hands, already free, found the guard's arm. A precise twist, pressure applied with scientific certainty. Bone snapped like dry wood. The guard's scream brought the wagon to a lurching halt. The second man fumbled for his pistol. Elijah grabbed his broken-armed companion, using him as a shield. The pistol fired twice, bullets thudding into meat. The human shield howled. Boots pounded outside. The wagon's back flap flew open. Elijah saw daylight. Rifles, Crowder's furious face. He drove his elbow into the second guard's throat, dropping him. Another shot cracked past his ear. He felt the hot wind of its passing. "Take him down!" Crowder shouted. "Now!" Elijah moved with fluid precision, muscle memory from countless fights guiding each strike. One man's nose shattered under his palm, another doubled over, ribs cracking. He used their bodies for cover, letting their bulk absorb bullets meant for him. Then hoofbeats thundered from the tree line. New voices shouted commands. Blue uniforms emerged from morning mist. A federal marshal's posse, at least 12 strong. Rifles leveled. Chaos erupted. Elijah dropped low as gunfire filled the air. Clansmen scattered, some firing back, others fleeing into woods. He saw Crowder wheel his horse, vanishing into shadows between pines. The wagon's horses reared, tangling harness. "Federal marshals!" a commanding voice bellowed. "Drop your weapons!" Through gun smoke, Elijah saw a tall figure dismount. The marshal's badge caught sunlight as he approached the wagon, revolver steady. His weathered face showed recognition, then shock. "Dear God," Marshal Thomas Hale said softly. "Captain Booker?" Elijah met his gaze calmly, despite blood running from fresh cuts. "Colonel Hale." "Been a while." Hale holstered his weapon, helping Elijah from the wagon. "You were listed as killed in action. Your whole unit." "That was the point," Elijah said. He tested his leg, finding new injuries, but nothing critical. "Better if we stayed dead." Hale's deputies secured surviving Clansmen, binding wounds and taking names. The marshal led Elijah aside, speaking low. "I heard rumors about your operations. Special Tactics Unit, answering directly to Sherman's command. The numbers they attributed to your team were accurate," Elijah finished. He accepted a canteen, rinsing blood from his mouth. "We eliminated priority targets, Confederate officers, guerrilla leaders, supply coordinators, anyone whose death would shorten the war." "How many?" "I stopped counting after 50. Elijah handed back the canteen. The official records were burned. "Better for everyone." A deputy approached, holding papers found in the wagon. Hale read them quickly, face darkening. "Membership lists, meeting locations. This is the whole Red Clay Clavern network." He looked at Elijah. "They had no idea who they grabbed, did they?" "They wanted an example," Elijah said. "Someone to break publicly." The remaining Klansmen were being loaded into prison wagons. Most avoided looking at Elijah now, fear replacing arrogance. Word was spreading among them, whispered descriptions of his fighting style, his precision, his silence during torture. One young night rider, barely 20, stared openly. "Who are you?" "Really?" "Captain Elijah Booker," Hale answered before Elijah could speak. "Commanded a classified Union strike unit during the war. His team eliminated more high-value targets than any regiment in the field. The official death count was never released." The young man's face went pale. Others nearby listened intently, horror growing as they realized what they'd awakened. Their casual cruelty had roused something far deadlier than they imagined. "The war's over," the young Klansman protested weakly. "Is it?" Elijah asked quietly. The question hung in morning air, unanswered. Hale signaled his deputies to move out. "We'll need your testimony about last night." "And the sawmill." Elijah nodded. watching the prison wagons roll away. He knew Crowder was still out there, gathering forces, planning revenge. The war wasn't over. It had simply changed forms, become more personal. And now both sides knew exactly who they faced. Afternoon heat pressed down like a wet blanket as Elijah rode with Marshal Hale toward the settlement. His borrowed horse moved steadily beneath him, each step reminding him of fresh bruises. The marshal's posse had scattered to track Crowder's men, but dark smoke on the horizon drew them south instead. "Looks like trouble," Hale said, squinting against the glare. Elijah said nothing, but his hands tightened on the reins. The smoke rose in a thick column, marking something big burning hot and fast. They urged their horses faster, hooves thundering on packed dirt. The first sign was the screaming. Then the heat hit them, a wall of it, pushing back against their approach. The Bethel Baptist Church, heart of the black community, burned like a torch against the afternoon sky. Its white clapboard walls were already blackened, flames leaping from blown-out windows. The cross on top tilted, then fell with a shower of sparks. People rushed about with buckets, trying to save what they could. But the fire had too much of a head start. Elijah dismounted awkwardly, his injured leg nearly buckling. An elderly woman grabbed his arm. "They came just after noon," she said, voice shaking. "Said that porter who escaped brought this on us. Said he was working with devils, turning good Christian folk against each other." Elijah's chest tightened. He recognized Sarah Whitlow helping organize the bucket line, her face streaked with soot. Their eyes met briefly. She looked away first. "Crowder," Hale growled. "Has to be. Using you as excuse to strike fear." The marshal's deputies spread out, gathering statements. Details emerged quickly. 6 riders, faces covered, carrying torches and kerosene. They'd locked the doors first, poured fuel through broken windows. No one inside, thank God. But Sunday was only 2 days away. Elijah moved closer to the burning church, heat searing his face. The stained glass windows that had survived over a decade of peace now shattered in the flames. Hymn books and Bibles made ash in the air. He remembered this church from before, how it had sheltered him once, given him water and rest when he first arrived in town. "My fault," he said quietly. Hale shook his head. Crowder's fault. His choice. His actions. Because of me. Elijah watched another section of roof collapse. "I could have disappeared after the first escape. Should have kept running." A young boy ran up, holding out a crumpled paper. "They left this nailed to the door." Hale took it, read quickly. "Warning to anyone helping the devil's porter. Says next time it won't be an empty building." Elijah's hands clenched into fists. The careful control he'd maintained since the war trembled. Violence rose in him like a tide. The familiar urge to hunt, to eliminate threats with absolute efficiency. He could do it. Track Crowder down. End this permanently. But that path led back to being only a weapon, letting rage erase everything else. The church bell, warped by heat, fell with a final mournful toll. Elijah turned away, limping toward his horse. Sarah called after him. "Where are you going?" "Away," he said. "Far as I can." "Draw them off, so they win?" Her voice cracked with anger. "They burn our church, threaten our children, and you just disappear?" Elijah stopped, one hand on the saddle. The answer had seemed so clear a moment ago. Remove himself. Remove the excuse for violence. But Sarah was right. Running solved nothing. It only left others to suffer the consequences. He looked back at the burning church, remembering all the times he'd hidden his true nature, tried to be less than he was. Playing weak had felt like wisdom. Now it felt like cowardice. "No," he said finally, "they don't win." The sun was setting by the time the fire burned itself out. Elijah sat alone on the church steps, watching stars appear through drifting smoke. His leg ached, injuries from the morning making themselves known. But his mind was clear for the first time in years. He didn't have to choose between being a weapon or being nothing. There was another way, using his skills with surgical precision instead of blind rage. He could dismantle Crowder's organization piece by piece, using their own records against them. Not through fury or vengeance, but through careful, methodical justice. Night settled fully around the church's skeleton. Elijah stood, testing his weight on his bad leg. Tomorrow he would begin. Not as the merciless killer he'd been in war, but as something new. Something that could bring justice without losing humanity. He touched the charred church door once, a promise without words. Then he turned toward town, where Crowder's men waited, not yet knowing how completely their world would change. Dawn crept over the town, painting the buildings in pale gray light. Elijah sat at Marshall Hale's desk, studying tax records and property deeds spread before him. His fingers, still bruised from fighting, traced lines of ownership back through years of careful fraud. 7 properties, he said, voice low and steady. All bought with stolen union funds, registered under false names. Hale leaned against the wall, watching. That's half their holdings. Enough to squeeze them. More than enough. Elijah stood carefully, favoring his injured leg. I'll start with the Mason brothers. They handle Crowder's money. You want backup? No. Better alone. Elijah moved through early morning streets like a shadow, noting which windows still held lamplight, which doors opened too quickly. He found the first Mason brother at the lumber yard, counting inventory alone. James Mason turned at the sound of footsteps, then froze. Elijah's sighs filled the doorway, blocking escape. Your bank records, Elijah said quietly, show interesting patterns. Don't know what you mean. Mason's hand inched toward a nearby saw. Elijah closed the distance in 2 steps. His fingers wrapped around Mason's wrist, applying precise pressure to nerve points. The saw clattered to the floor. $8,000, Elijah continued, voice still calm. Transferred from Union Reconstruction funds. Serial numbers recorded. Your signature on every document. Mason's face went pale. You can't prove? Already proved. Elijah released his wrist, but stayed close. Marshall has the papers, but I'm giving you a choice. Testify against Crowder, or face federal charges. He'll kill me. I'll protect you. Elijah's eyes held Mason's. You've seen what I can do. By mid-morning, James Mason was in protective custody, singing like a bird. His brother Robert tried running, made it 3 miles before Elijah caught him. Same choice, same result. Hale watched from his office as Elijah systematically dismantled Crowder's support network. Never seen anything like it, he told his deputy. Man moves like a ghost, thinks like a general. Near noon, Elijah confronted the Claverns' treasurer outside the bank. No violence needed, just quiet words about numbered accounts and witnessed signatures. The man crumbled in minutes, handed over ledgers documenting years of corruption. How many more? Hale asked when Elijah returned. 3 lieutenants, Elijah said. Then Crowder. The first lieutenant tried fighting. Elijah let him throw 2 wild punches before stepping inside his guard. A precise strike to the solar plexus, another to the knee. The man folded, gasping. You're not human, he wheezed. Very human. Elijah helped him up. Just better trained. The second lieutenant wasn't home, but his wife was, along with a strong box of Klan membership records. She handed them over without protest, eyes hard with old resentment. He's at the old Whitaker place, she said. With the others. The third lieutenant met Elijah on the road with a shotgun. Elijah saw the ambush coming, waited until the man's hands shook with tension. You won't shoot, Elijah said. Try me. If you were going to, you would have already. Elijah stepped closer. You're not a killer. Just a man following orders, like I was once. The shotgun lowered slowly. Another quiet conversation. Another piece of Crowder's power stripped away. By sunset, Crowder stood alone. His men were in custody or had fled, his records seized, his money frozen. Elijah watched the man's house from shadow, noting the frantic movement inside. Lamps blazed in every window. "He's trapped," Hale said, joining him. "We can move in now." Elijah shook his head. "Not yet. Let him feel it first. The isolation, the powerlessness. Let him understand what he's done to others." They watched another hour as Crowder paced, visible through curtained windows. His shadow showed him drinking heavily, checking weapons, jumping at sounds. The mighty clan leader reduced to a frightened man in an empty house. "Tomorrow?" Hale asked. "Tomorrow," Elijah agreed. "Early, while he's exhausted. No guns needed." Hale studied him in the growing dark. "You've changed since I knew you in the war. More controlled. Had to change. The war version of me, that was just destruction. This is justice." Night settled fully over the town. In his house, Crowder's shadow continued its restless movement, a man confronting the collapse of everything he'd built. Elijah touched the marshal's shoulder once, then limped away toward his boarding house room. Tomorrow would end this, but tonight was for letting fear do its work. Dusk painted the sky purple as Elijah approached Crowder's house. The windows were dark now, but a thin line of lamplight leaked beneath the front door. Elijah's boots made no sound on the porch steps. His breathing remained steady, measured. He'd waited all day for this moment, letting Crowder stew in isolation. The door wasn't locked. Elijah pushed it open slowly, hinges creaking. The front room smelled of whiskey and gun oil. Empty bottles littered the floor. Papers were scattered everywhere. Burning evidence, Elijah noted, but too late to matter. "I know you're here." Crowder's voice came from the back room, slurred but still dangerous. "Come to finish it?" Elijah moved through the house like a shadow, testing each floorboard before putting his weight down. His injured leg barely troubled him now. The soldier's instincts had fully awakened. "You could have run," Elijah said quietly. "Like you ran." Bitter laughter. "No! This ends here." Crowder lunged from behind a door, swinging a wooden chair. Elijah stepped inside the attack, letting the chair graze his shoulder. His elbow struck Crowder's ribs with precise force. The chair splintered against the wall. They grappled in the dim light. Crowder was strong, fueled by desperation and drink. He drove Elijah back against a desk, scattering more papers. His fist caught Elijah's jaw. Elijah absorbed the blow, then another. He'd expected wild violence. Let Crowder tire himself out. "Fight back!" Crowder spat. "Show me the killer they say you are." Instead, Elijah moved with controlled efficiency. He blocked a wild punch, twisted Crowder's arm behind his back, applied careful pressure until tendons strained. "This isn't about killing," Elijah said softly. Crowder broke free, stumbling. He grabbed a broken chair leg, swung it like a club. Elijah caught his wrist, redirected the momentum. They crashed through an interior door together. In the kitchen, moonlight spilled through windows. Crowder's face was finally visible. Unshaven, eyes bloodshot, fear mixing with rage. He fought like a cornered animal now, all technique abandoned. Elijah stayed calm. Block, step, strike. Each movement precise. He'd done this so many times during the war, but differently then. That had been pure elimination. This was something else. "What are you waiting for?" Crowder gasped between blows. "Finish it!" "No." Elijah caught another wild swing, turned it into an arm lock. "You don't get to die clean." Their struggling knocked over a kitchen table. Plates shattered. Crowder grabbed a knife from the wreckage, slashed wildly. Elijah felt it slice his sleeve, draw blood. The knife changed things. Elijah stopped holding back quite so much. His next strike broke Crowder's nose. The one after that cracked ribs. Still controlled, still precise, but now with full force behind each blow. Crowder staggered, spitting blood. The knife clattered to the floor. He tried to reach for it again, but Elijah's boot came down on his wrist. Bones ground together. "It's done," Elijah said. "Kill me." Crowder's voice was thick, pleading. "Make it mean something." "It already means something." Elijah kept pressure on the wrist. "You're going to live. Face charges. Watch everything you built crumble." Heavy footsteps approached from outside. Marshal Hale and his deputies, right on schedule. Elijah had timed it perfectly. "In here," he called. Lantern light flooded the kitchen. Hale took in the scene. Broken furniture, blood drops, Crowder pinned beneath Elijah's boot. "Alive?" Hale asked. "Alive." Elijah stepped back, letting deputies move in with shackles. "He's all yours, Marshal." They dragged Crowder to his feet. He swayed, one eye swelling shut, but managed to focus on Elijah. "Should have killed me when you had the chance," he muttered. "No." Elijah watched as they secured the restraints. "Death is too easy. You live with what you made." They led Crowder out into the night. His boots stumbled on the porch steps. A crowd had gathered, drawn by the noise. White faces and black faces in the darkness, watching silently as the mighty clan leader was marched away in chains. Hale lingered behind. "You all right?" Elijah touched his bleeding arm. "Fine. Just a scratch. Could have gone worse. Man like that, cornered." "No." Elijah straightened slowly, muscles already stiffening. It went exactly how it needed to go. Through the window, he watched the small procession move down the street. Crowder's head was bowed now, shoulders slumped. The pose of a man finally understanding his powerlessness. Hale cleared his throat. "Need anything else?" "No." Elijah moved toward the door. "It's finished." 3 weeks later, morning light filtered through dusty windows at the rail depot. Elijah stood at the ticket counter, his few possessions packed in a worn leather satchel. The station was quiet except for the distant whistle of an approaching train. "1 ticket to Memphis," he said, sliding coins across the counter. The clerk, who weeks ago would have barely looked at him, counted the money carefully. "Yes, sir, Mr. Booker." The "sir" still felt strange. Word had spread, as it always did in small towns. Not the full truth, but enough. Stories about the man who broke the clavern. Some called him a hero. Others, a demon. Neither fit quite right. Outside, the station platform creaked under familiar footsteps. Sarah Whitlow approached, carrying a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Thought I'd find you here," she said. Elijah turned. Sarah looked different now, standing straighter, speaking louder. The fear was gone from her eyes, replaced by something harder. "Just passing through," he said. "That's what you said last time." She handed him the package. "Some bread for the journey. And a letter if you ever need work in Chicago. My cousin runs a shipping company there." Elijah accepted the package carefully. "Thank you, but I'm headed west." "Running again?" "No." He tucked the package into his satchel. "Just moving on. Work to do elsewhere." Sarah studied him for a long moment. "They say Crowder's trial starts next week. Federal charges. Looking at 20 years. Good. The others, too. Those that survived, anyway." She paused. 3 hanged themselves in their cells. Couldn't face the shame, I expect." Elijah nodded. He'd heard the news, but felt nothing. Neither satisfaction nor regret. Just a dull acknowledgement that justice worked in strange ways. "The church is being rebuilt," Sarah continued. "Community came together. White folks, too. Some of them. Things are different. For now. Maybe longer. People remember what happened here." She straightened her shawl. "They remember you. Better if they didn't. Too late for that." A hint of a smile crossed her face. "My boys still talk about you. The man who wouldn't break." The train whistle sounded closer now. Elijah could feel the vibrations in the platform boards. "They shouldn't make legends of violence," he said quietly. "No legends, just truth." Sarah's voice hardened. "Sometimes that's what's needed. Someone to show it can be done. Fighting back. Standing up. There are other ways. Yes, and we'll find them. But first, we needed to see it was possible. She touched his arm briefly. You showed us that. The train appeared around the bend, black smoke curling against the morning sky. Elijah shifted his weight, testing his healing leg. The limp would never fully fade, but it was his now, earned rather than inflicted. What will you do? He asked. Live, work, raise my children. Sarah's chin lifted. And if trouble comes again, face it standing up. Steam hissed as the train slowed to a stop. Passengers began dismounting, creating a brief flurry of activity on the platform. Time to go, Elijah said. Yes, Sarah stepped back. God be with you, Mr. Booker. And you, Mrs. Whitlow. He boarded the train, found an empty seat by the window. As the engine built steam again, he caught a final glimpse of Sarah on the platform. She raised one hand slightly. Not quite a wave, more an acknowledgement. The train pulled away, gathering speed. The town fell behind, then the sawmill where it had all started. Elijah watched until the landmarks faded into unfamiliar territory. He touched the scar on his arm from Crowder's knife. It had healed clean, unlike older wounds. That seemed important somehow. The sun was rising properly now, painting the western horizon in shades of promise. Elijah settled back in his seat, feeling the rhythm of the rails. His body remembered other trains, other escapes. But this was different. This time, he moved by choice, not necessity. The war inside him hadn't ended, might never end completely. But it had changed. The weapon and the man had found a kind of peace, not through forgiveness or redemption, but through purpose. Fields and forests rolled past the window. Somewhere ahead lay other towns, other injustices. He would face them differently now. Not as a shadow seeking vengeance, but as a man who had finally stopped running from what he was. The train picked up speed, wheels clicking steadily westward. Elijah watched the sunrise paint the sky gold. He was not hunted now, not redeemed either, but resolved, at peace with the hard truth of what justice sometimes required. I hope you found that story powerful. Leave a like on the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. I have handpicked 2 stories for you that are even more powerful. Have a great day.